the Supreme Court, they tossed the citizenship question.
Yes, I saw that.
They had two big Supreme Court decisions today, and actually they went opposite to what I thought was going to happen. And it was Justice Roberts who was the swing vote in both.
Of course.
Okay, and he's now the new center from Kennedy.
From Kennedy, right.
And they said it for the census that the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, gave an explanation of why they needed to put the citizenship question on the census. And that explanation was, we need it so that we can enforce the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was a civil rights act. And the Supreme Court said, wait, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just because you want to enforce the Civil Rights Act, there has to be some relationship between the Civil Rights Act and asking, are you a United States citizen? And they saw no relationship between the two. What they said was, go back to the lower courts and tell us what the relationship is between the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the question about citizenship on the census for 2020. Are you a United States citizen? Now, people who are against this said the reason why Donald Trump put "Are you a United States citizen?" on the census is to make minorities, people who are in homes that are mixed between U.S. citizens and residents, or U.S. citizens and people who are non-immigrants or out of status, to make them less likely to answer that census. So if you're an American citizen and you're married to someone who's out of status, are you going to fill that out? If you're a U.S. citizen married to a resident, are you going to fill that out? Maybe. If you're a minority who doesn't understand, or new to America who doesn't understand the census question, and you're going to get scared. Now, the census is very important because it determines how many electoral votes each state gets to vote for president. It determines how much money gets doled out to each state and each jurisdiction based on how Congress makes a legislation for money. For example, they say $400 million for transportation. It gets distributed based on where people live and the census. It was all done to limit immigrants from participating in the census and minorities. So that is now not on the census. Right before we came on the air, Donald Trump tweets out, seems totally ridiculous that our government and indeed our country cannot ask a basic question of citizenship at a very expensive, detailed and important census, in this case for 2020. I've asked the lawyers if they can delay the census no matter how long until the United States Supreme Court is given additional information from which it can make a final and decisive decision on this very critical matter. It was because the census was ready to start at the end of the month. So they were going to print out the census forms at the end of the month. Now they can't put, are you a U.S. citizen? But this is the problem, Donald Trump, and I'm far from a constitutional census expert. But I'll throw my 2 cents into the ring anyway. The Constitution says it has to be done every 10 years. I don't think you can argue with the Constitution of the United States and say, we're not going to do it.
Because I lost.
Because I lost.
Right.
Okay? So last I read, the Constitution says you got to do it every 10 years. So I'm not sure what the lawyers would be looking at. Now, the other case that was the gerrymandering case, and that's when you draw districts, so it's more likely for somebody who is more liberal or more conservative to be voting in that district. So they make districts that are very conservative voters and very liberal voters to make the individual elections for House of Representatives not very competitive. So if Republicans or you're in control of state legislature, you're going to draw the map like, okay, well, there's a lot of liberals over here, there's a lot of conservatives over here. I'm going to draw the map so that this section is now conservative. And I'm going to draw the map to make as many liberals as I can in one district. That way, they're not spread out. We know we'll lose 2 or 3 seats and everything else will go Republican. That's how the Republicans do it. The court said that's completely legal. Supreme Court said that's completely legal, which doesn't make any sense to me. Right. Basically what this is you get to pick, as a congressman or as a Republican Party, if you're in control of the state legislature, you get to pick who votes for you. How is that democratic?
Yeah.
You don't get to pick who votes for you. The Republican Party, or if the Democrats, they're in control of a particular state, they get to draw the district and get to decide who's going to vote for them. It makes no sense to me. So when I saw these 2 cases coming up, I believed that the gerrymandering case was going to get overturned.
Right.
And
because
say
it's so
you can't do it because it's so blatant.
Right.
And I thought that the census question was going to be on the census. Now, I'm no expert on the Voting Rights Act, and I'm not an expert on the census. So I'm like, all right, well, if there's some rational reason, then I know they're using it as a pretext to really make minorities and immigrants not participate in the census.
Right.
But if they came out with some rational reason, even though it's a pretext, I said it'll pass muster.
Right.
But they were so dumb that the Supreme Court said, we see no relationship between the Voting Rights Act and whether or not the census says whether you're a U.S. citizen or not.
Right.
So not only was it a pretext, but there was no connection between the two. So that's why they lost that, actually. But I don't know what, he tweeted out, I'm going to have lawyers look at it. If, in fact, he was able to do something, he would have said what he was going to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you this. Now, I'm just thinking out off the top of my head. Okay, I'm the President of the United States. I know this census thing is coming up for a vote.
Right.
I will have already met with my people. People, if we lose this census thing on the Supreme Court, we got to print this thing next week. What are you going to do? You have all your contingency plans in place. I don't know what the contingency plan is. He doesn't know what it is either. So that's why he says, I'm going to have my people look at it. But if you really had a case to not do the census next week, he would have already said what it is. That corporate America is responding to the immigration crisis. Wayfair employees walked out of a Boston-based furniture company's Copley Square headquarters Wednesday over executives' refusal to back out of a sale to a government contractor furnishing a federal detention center for migrants near the U.S. Mexico border. Hundreds of employees signed a letter that said Wayfair had a contract for $200,000 worth of bedroom furniture, and that they would be sending it to Health and Human Services, and it would be distributed to the migrant detention facilities, the jails, on the U.S. side of the border, these 10 cities where the overcrowding and bad conditions, children are dying every day. And Wayfair's leadership team, in an unsigned response to protesting employees, wrote that it was proud to have such an engaged team that is focused on impacting our world in meaningful, important ways, but that as companies practice to fulfill all lawful orders. As business leaders, we also believe in the importance of respecting diversity of thought within our organization and across our customer base, and no matter how strongly any one of us feels about an issue, it's important to keep in mind that not all employees or customers agree. And now the employees had asked the company to stop the sale and review its code of ethics regarding business-to-business sales, and the employees have since asked Wayfair to donate profits from the sale to the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. Bank of America says that it will stop lending to companies that run private prisons.
Wow.
And this move followed a review by the company's Environmental Social Governance Committee, which visited sites and consulted with civil rights activists. And this is what Bank of America says. We've done our due diligence that we said we would do at the annual meetings, and this is the decision we've made. Bank of America is at least the third major bank to cut off business with the jail industry. It's a big business in America to put people in jail. It is a huge, huge business. Millions and millions of people in jail, and they're in jail as a profit making for private companies. So Wayfair, are they going to? I don't know. Have they said whether they're going to donate the money that they received from the sale to the Refugee and Immigrant Center? Have the employees gone back to work? What's going on there?
So the last that we heard is that Wayfair has only submitted that letter to those employees, has not spoken to the media at all yet, and the employees are still locked out from the last I saw. Beds need to be sold to those facilities.
Yeah, but this is the issue. You don't want to work for a company that is making bad social decisions, bad decisions for America. There is a responsibility of U.S. companies, of corporate America, to do the right thing. There's a responsibility for the government to do the right thing. There's a responsibility for the employees of U.S. corporations to do the right thing. It's like, would I personally go work for Philip Morris? If Philip Morris called me up and said, Brad, I want you to do work visas, I would not take the work from Philip Morris, and I will tell you that for a fact. I wouldn't. Why? Because Philip Morris is killing people.
Right.
So yes, there'll be another immigration lawyer. There'll be another immigration lawyer that'll take it, but it's not going to be me. Let them get beds from another company. I'm not going to be part of jailing children. Wayfair is now making a profit from people
over the incarceration of children.
Over the incarceration of children.
So if they do donate the money, then is it okay?
No, it's not okay. And if every American company says to the Trump administration, we're not going to give you beds, we don't want to do business with you, okay? Then there's no jails anymore.
Just because they don't have beds?
No, because everybody's saying they don't want this. People are protesting. It's called a protest. And if people don't stand up for what they believe in, and they just say, okay, well, they need a bed, I'm going to give it to them, then the government will do whatever they want. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.